G'day folks, welcome to this second report of this full campaign of Baptism by Fire. This is the end of the second turn, the 15th of February 1943, and here is the situation. The action is really starting to stretch out towards the west here, but let me focus here on the situation sort of in the centre southeast to explain developments. We had Kampf Group, the Germans won the initiative, a lot of air points, a lot of reinforcements, replacements rather, so some healthy units. And Kampf Group Rhein activated first and drove into Sbeitla, launched an offensive, an attack. It was successful. The Tigers got active and through a couple of encounters forced the Americans back. CCA then activated, and this was an interesting little decision they made formally in this area. You may recall they were kind of trapped in this area. Well, not trapped, but they've been pushed off the roads into this area here on the tracks. And this infantry starts up in these mountains. I decided to try to consolidate the CCA in here. So they all, the screening unit moved to the north, the infantry jumped out of the hills and moved out, and that all put them in this command radius quite here, and it looked like a nice little position. They could draw supply along these tracks to their combat trains via a kind of a winding path. It could, at the time, make it. And it looked good briefly. Then, after that, Kampf Group Gerhardt activated, and they moved in mainly to support these Tigers. I was very worried about these Tigers. So they also drove along this road here through Sbeitla, keeping in mind that this formation, Kampf Group Gerhardt, will be removed at the end of the 17th, at the beginning of the 17th of February in the reinforcement turn. So they've only basically got 3 full turns. They've spent 2 now, and so I'm trying to get them involved as much as possible to be active in pushing Combat Command C back, partly to save the Tigers, the one-step Tiger company, which I'm very worried about. So Gerhardt has been sort of more proactive in driving out that way. We then had Task Force Stark activate, and they also faced some difficult decisions out here. They start, you may recall from the last video, they've already had they're spent for the first turn. This is their first activation, but they start spread out. And at the end of this turn, they have to be within a command radius. So it's a difficult decision. Do they kind of defend Kasserine here? Do they try and defend Thalette down here? I decided to push them to the north, partly thinking that maybe I was thinking maybe they could have moved on Sbeitla, but they didn't get a second activation, just the first, and they're focused around Kasserine, around this area. So that's where they are. They'll probably defend that pass through there. After their activation, we had this Kampf Group in the centre, and this is where Combat Command A's plans became undone, because they smashed into the headquarters, smashed into their armour, a lot of step losses among the Americans. We've got 3 CCA units destroyed now. And yeah, the headquarters was shattered, and they sort of driving them back along this road, isolating the reconnaissance screening unit, isolating the infantry, who has now left their mountains and will have to suffer some pretty bad isolation attrition on their next activation. And so the other infantry is still staying up in the hills over in the east. So they were very successful, and it puts them in a little bit of a supply problem. They're going to have to use some trails to draw supply, which also had to move, but they got the job done, I guess, in clearing the Allies out of that area, forcing their headquarters back. They posed a bit of a threat there, so that's now gone. We then had Combat Command C. And by this stage, they'd actually, with the attack of these 2 Kampf groups focusing on Combat Command C, that was spent. We've actually got 2 don't know if you noticed it, up on the turn track, 2 of their units couldn't retreat and have been removed. They'll return in the next activation, but there's not much they could do. They've pulled back onto the road to try and get a supply network going. That'll kind of weave around the back off into the distance up there in the north. Very stretched supply line. They don't have any forces left. Even this unit is lost a step. And then finally, we had this Kampf group out on the left. And what they're basically doing is using this trail. They got lucky. They got a second activation. They're still fresh. And they're driving west. And they'll be in Sbeitla, I think, maybe by next turn. If they can 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, they'll be in command range to reach that on the next turn. And they can shift to the north and drive towards Kasserine. Keeping in mind, also, you may have noticed that entry hex, the red line out here, I believe that's a possible exit location for one of the victory conditions. So it sets them up well to maybe drive along this road. However, there are reinforcements, allied reinforcements coming in from here. That was part of Stark's thinking as well. We can drive to the north, maybe the reinforcements can defend this area. So taking a sort of a big broad view, again you've got this Kampf group driving along the west here. I can move these out of the way. The 2 southern Kampf groups have pretty much secured this area now. This infantry will deteriorate. The headquarters has no units. There's nothing with Combat Command A. 2 other infantry stuck in the mountains. Combat Command C still poses a threat, but I don't think it's a serious one. This leaves, as I said, Kampf Group Gerhardt will be removed, but Kampf Group Rhein is looking now to drive. They did detour, they had to slow down. They haven't been getting second activations. Both of these northern Kampf groups, I think, have failed their chance for a second activation. Here's the headquarters for Rhein. They're still fresh. That means they'll pass on a 3 or more, but I think they've failed. So yeah, look, it was a very interesting turn, just with the Allied Combat Command A forming what looked to be a good rallying point along this trail here with the supply path, and then it all falling apart with that Kampf group's activation. So folks, that's the end of the second turn. It's the end of the 15th of Feb. I'm about to head into the 16th of Feb. Stay tuned and I'll report back when that day's done.